Good afternoon. We are going to resume the session, please. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we resume the meeting. We have a last presentation from this morning, which will take place immediately just before session number 1. I invite you to follow it with attention because we have with us Senator Xuclà from Spain. He's a university professor, and he carried out for PAM an evaluation of how PAM performed in the last 10 years, what PAM has achieved, what are the challenges ahead of us, how to face them together, how to be prepared, and how also to invest in the network of partnerships, which is one of the major aims of the forum today here in Marrakesh. So I give the floor to Professor Xuclà, and then President Centemero will take over the session 1. Professor, please.
Grazie mille, Ambasciatore Piaggi. Let me to take the advantage of translation in Spanish to shift my intervention to Spanish, because after this morning I have noticed that I have the opportunity to take the floor in Spanish. Honorables, thank you. Honorables autoridades, Presidente Centemero.
Thank you very much, honorable authorities. This is an economic forum, but this is an opportunity for the parliamentary assemblies from different regions to meet and to exchange. This is the most important gathering point for parliamentary assemblies, whether they are from Africa, Euro-Mediterranean or Gulf regions, and the Middle East, and the South of Caucasus. As Ambassador Piaggi said, during these last months, we worked on a report for the last 10 years of PAM, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary. PAM has this characteristic with the Interparliamentary Authority. These are the two parliamentary assemblies that are capable of adapting to reality and showing resilience. In these parliamentary assemblies, we find two models. The first, that of parliamentary assemblies that have bodies, legislative bodies, whereas there are other parliamentary assemblies that are autonomous. It is the level of political integration, the collaboration, and the interaction are indispensable tools between these assemblies and their internal executive branches, whether it is the ambassadors or the ministers. Since the integration is a moderate one, as is the case in the Mediterranean, if we compare the two on objective data and indicators and taking into account the parliamentary dimension, the PAM, I think, can provide better results. Why? Because of its flexibility, its reactivity. It does not have to follow the slow pace of executive bodies. These assemblies, therefore, have a greater capacity to adapt and can therefore have a policy that is more based on, that is outcome-based, result-based policy. We have listened to important statements from Africa and America in this morning. And I think that there is a possibility to integrate new dynamics in this fragmented world, a world in transition, and a global order that is shifting. Regional cooperation, integration, regional integration is working fairly well. But we need to have regional integration. And when the various states are capable of developing a multi-sectoral policy, that works well. That is why PAM can integrate with the flexibility that it has, this Mediterranean dimension. And the Middle Eastern countries and the Gulf countries can also contribute, as well as the South Caucasus. Why is this so strategic? This is a corridor, a narrow corridor between Europe and Asia that is between two basic or important areas that involve Russia and Iran. That is why regional integration through parliamentary cooperation and parliamentary assemblies can be very important, as Jean Monnet said, thanks to tangible results and the possibility to make progress. It is this dynamic that we would like to reactivate with the Euro-Mediterranean policy. You know that the president of the PAM, of the Barcelona process, has started this process 30 years ago. And back then, he was looking forward to concrete results in this regard. And in fact, we came up with an assessment, a tally of what was achieved over the last 10 years. And we're going back to a policy that is objective or result-oriented in the area of transfer of knowledge and expertise, and also a policy that takes into account AI, migration issue, cooperation on a number of subjects, including renewable energy and the green economy. This is not just an opinion. This is the result of an investigation that we carried out involving 112 responders that involved parliaments of member states and other stakeholders with whom we interacted through the PAM. These 120 actors, the level of satisfaction is very high, that is, regarding the results obtained. The grade is, or the mark is ranges between 9 and 10. That is, as far as adapting to new challenges, the ability to be autonomous and not depend on an executive body. Therefore, this survey shows that this parliamentary assembly can increase its regional integration and work with other regional assemblies. That is why, from a perspective of not of political will, but of the university relation and taking into consideration the scientific considerations, we can say that when cooperation is not very developed, this assembly is more flexible. It bases its action on diplomacy between individuals, and not simply on diplomatic initiatives. I would like to congratulate you for the work you've done because you managed, in concrete terms, to promote this Euro-Mediterranean cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. All right, let's start with the first. Integration, free trade, and public debt. And all right, the jingle.
The foundations of economic integration are being tested as never before. Protectionism is back. Public debt is soaring. And the rules-based order that generations of legislators helped build is under strain. As parliamentarians, we share both the responsibility and the power to respond. How can we rebuild the political consensus for open, fair, and fiscally responsible economies?
All right, so let's start. First of all, thanks to all the participants and the speakers for contributing to this conference, to this forum. And as you were saying this morning, and also Senator Shukla was mentioning, we're so fragmented and so disharmonic in our region that a little bit more of, let's say, integration could bring big economic development. We will talk with this about this with our guests, very skillful people, very skillful person, professionals. Brett Reiner, Deputy Chief of the North Africa Division at the IMF, and then Mr. Abdullah Jeffrey, Division Director for the GCC countries, the International Financial Corporation of the World Bank Group, Ms. Violeta Gonzalez, Counselor at the WTO, Mr. Badr Haliwa, Founding President of Sterling Asset Management, and Mr. Abil Bahi, Director of Transport Strategy, Management and Coordination at the Ministry of Transport and Logistics of the Kingdom of Morocco. So let's start with the first round of questions, and let's start from Brett Reiner. Thank you, Brett, for joining us. So first question, considering the recent geopolitical developments, what are the key trends you are observing in the region right now?
Thank you, Giulio. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. Clearly, the outbreak of war in the Middle East has delivered a severe shock to the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz is a critical energy choke point through which about a fifth of the world's oil supply and about a quarter of the world's LNG supply normally pass. And that has come effectively to a standstill. So what does this mean for the global economy? Well, given the exceptional uncertainty on the duration and the intensity of the conflict, the IMF presents a reference scenario along with an adverse alternative as a way of framing the risks to the global outlook. And in the reference scenario, it's assumed that the conflict starts to normalize around the middle of this year, and also that the price of oil averages about $82 a barrel for the year as a whole. Global growth in this scenario is expected to slow to about 3.1% this year and 3.3% next year. To give you some context, global growth over the last 20 years has averaged about 3.7%. Now, in the adverse scenario, it's assumed that the conflict lasts longer, that oil prices go higher for longer, and average about $110 a barrel for the year. And that would bring global growth down to about 2.5%, so a significant reduction. But really, the economic fallout goes far beyond just oil markets. European natural gas prices have surged by 60%. That's higher than what we saw in 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Fertilizer, aluminum, and phosphate prices have also surged, and that's posing risks to agricultural markets around the world, and especially for economies in the Middle East and Africa. But the economic fallout has also affected services. Air traffic collapsed at major Gulf hubs. Departures fell by about a third in Abu Dhabi and about 2/3 in Dubai, 3/4 in Doha, and in Kuwait and Bahrain, they effectively were suspended. Maritime insurance premiums have surged, shipping routes are getting longer, and therefore supply chains less efficient. And oil importers and low-income countries are also suffering. For the average emerging market oil importer in the Middle East and North Africa, we estimate that every 10% increase in the price of crude leads to a 0.5 percentage point less in growth and 1 percentage point more in inflation. So you can see the magnitudes here are quite large. Low-income countries and fragile states have the most severe humanitarian exposure. Countries like Yemen, Sudan, West Bank and Gaza, Syria, and Somalia have more than half of their population already experiencing food insecurity. And so higher import prices and food prices only amplify those social stability risks for countries that already have very few macroeconomic buffers. Let me stop there, Giulio.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. What you said, it's very, very important. So I'd move from Mr. Reiner to Mr. Abdullah Jeffrey. And I'd like to ask, in a context marked by economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions, what are the main factors investors consider when deciding where to allocate capital, and how can countries and governments across the Euro-Mediterranean Gulf regions remain attractive investment destinations? This is something that parliamentarians ask themselves very often, because sometimes we are like aliens, you know, investors and parliamentarians. We don't talk, so we don't understand what we need to provide you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for the question. I think the context that Brett outlined for us may give the impression that capital is retrenching and is not and is pulling away from investing and posing dire consequences for potential south-south capital mobilization. But in reality, capital is still there. And I just came back from Baku from the Islamic Development Bank annual meetings, and we've had several meetings with GCC investors looking for opportunities across Africa, North Africa, and other markets in the region. So capital is there. And I think, as you kindly laid out, the important question is, what are the factors that will attract them? And I will summarize them in 3 key factors. The first one would be macroeconomic resilience. And this is important in the current context. Now, how can countries achieve or signal macroeconomic resilience? Is through credible fiscal management. We are going through an era of rising public debt levels across the world, especially in emerging markets. And debt service has started eating away from the fiscal space that is usually available for meeting development needs. So investors look at these, and countries that manage that fiscal space and ensure that they have the cushion to address development needs will be looked on favorably by investors. The second key factor is policy predictability. I think there's a misconception that investors shy away from risk, which is not true. Investors price risk, and when the when the risk and return formula works, capital gets mobilized and crowded in. So, and I'll come later to the risk-reward issue, but investors don't shy away from risk. What investors struggle with is policy inconsistency and surprises in rule changes. These are the factors that drive investors away. So economies or countries that continuously shift in their pre-formed priorities and have sudden policy changes, these drive investors away and it's not the underlying risk of the economy. And third factor is project bankability. And this is mainly around public-private partnership projects. What I've seen is a lot of the countries achieve success in executing PPP projects in airports and power generation. And these are relatively easy to structure because they're concession-based. So they get the signal that, okay, I can do a lot more PPPs. And then they start trying to move into social infrastructure and other public services like waste management and water. But these are not concessions anymore. Now you're getting into the availability payment type of PPPs. And these are a lot more challenging, and their success is predicated on allocating risk fairly. So it's quite challenging, and I see a lot of governments struggle in this space. And then they end up structuring projects that are not bankable, and that drives away investors. So these are the three key factors that countries need to focus on to attract investors. There are cross-cutting themes. First, you need markets that offer scale. So don't focus on one-offs. Countries need to build a pipeline of opportunities that not only will attract investors, but will show them potential for more success and more execution. Logistics connectivity. Again, Brett highlighted the challenges facing transportation sector. So investors are looking at countries that invest in their logistics connectivity and their access to value chains in the region. And last is reform commitments. We've discussed that aspect. I think it's important, especially for lawmakers, to be anchoring reforms. So it's not ebbing and flowing with the change of governments. It's consistent and anchored by the lawmakers in the country. I'll stop here.
All right. Very, very interesting. Well, about scale, as PAM, this is what we're trying to do. For example, with the MOU we're gonna to sign next, right after this session. And about all the rest, I find the reality in your words, especially the problem we all parliamentarians face in every year when we are going to vote for the budget law is the decrease of fiscal space. And it's a huge problem because we cannot provide our citizens the services they are asking for. And then I'll drop you another question that you will answer during the second round, which is, don't you think also that the risk adverse attitude of Europeans and people of this region compared to the different attitude of Americans play a role? But you will answer next. So just keep it in mind, because now it's time for Violeta Gonzalez of the WTO. And I'm going to ask her from the WTO perspective, what are currently the most significant challenges facing free trade and how these developments affecting both developed and emerging economies. So please, the floor is yours, Violeta.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I have to say that I can't think of a better place to be having a conversation around trade than Marrakesh. And the reason I say this is because the World Trade Organization, which is the only global organization governing rules of trade, was born in Marrakesh. And it was born in Marrakesh in 1994. With great credit also to the government, the Kingdom of Morocco and its government that brought together at that time 123 governments and basically created the WTO. It was built on I think it was a president of the Parliament of Eswatini talked about the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And so it incorporated the GATT into the WTO and its framework with a long list of other agreements that really at that time helped to bring and govern and everything related to trade in goods and services as we knew trade at that time. And so I'm taking you back to 1994. 1995 was officially when governments ratified all those agreements, and the organization was created because to respond to the three challenges, it's important to understand how the world has really changed. and what brings me to maybe now sharing some of my views. And I say my views because the WTO has 166 governments. I work for the WTO Secretariat, and I have to share a disclaimer that I don't speak on behalf of my members. I speak on behalf of the Secretariat, or maybe not even on behalf of the Secretariat, but on behalf of someone who cares very much about the multilateral trading system. And I think over the years, I've seen sort of three main challenges that keep me and a lot of my colleagues in the Secretariat up at night. And so the first challenge is that the most favored nation principle, many of you might have heard this, which is when a government within the WTO treats another government in its trade, it should do it in a way that's non-discriminatory. It should do it in a way that it doesn't discriminate on its tariffs or its services or an intellectual property rights based on the size or the power of another country. And so that MFN principle has been one since 1995 that has really kept the global trading system to be predictable, to be stable, to be transparent. And in today's world, it's being challenged. And we're living now through a period where for the past 2 years, there's been some countries that have not been following MFN because they're applying probably what's in the headlines more than anything, it's different tariff rates. And so that MFN principle that was the bedrock of the WTO and the global trading system today has really changed. Now, the good news is that a couple of years ago, our members would not have this conversation within the WTO, and so some started to operate outside of the organization and not following MFN. And today, as part of the reform of the organization, they are finally discussing MFN. And so what it means is that they're having difficult conversations around imbalances, around overcapacity, around different issues, and how to tackle those so that perhaps they, in the near future, start to discuss whether tariff rates should be changed and should be adapted to today's world. So that's the first challenge I see in today's global trading system. The second is really around what many of you spoke earlier, which is artificial intelligence. And it's artificial intelligence in the trade context, where our latest World Trade Report from 2025 looked at artificial intelligence and trade. And what our economists and our researchers learned is that there's a potential for artificial intelligence to have global trade increase by nearly 40% by 2040, which is an enormous potential for great growth by then. But the challenge is that as much as artificial intelligence is revolutionizing trade, it's helping to create more supply chain visibility, to authenticate customs procedures, to reduce language barriers. It can do many, many things. But the main challenge around artificial intelligence and trade is that not everybody has access to the technologies. So we're seeing that there's a high concentration of AI in certain countries. There's sometimes very high tariffs around artificial intelligence goods and services that are important for powering trade. And so this is also a major concern for many of us now looking at global trade. And maybe last but not least, one of the main challenges I also see is around national security and trade. And I say national security because while the video talked a lot about protectionism within the WTO and preceding the WTO and the GATT, there was always an exception for our governments to resort to national security as an exception in their measures when there was a real national security concern. And so you can think that back in the day, if you were in a building and there's a fire extinguisher, you kind of knew it was there. If you needed to use it, you would break the glass and you would take the fire extinguisher. Well, that was what national security meant within the WTO. It was really meant to be used if there was a really, really important issue. But nowadays, that's changing. A lot of our members are resorting to taking practices and resorting to measures and justifying them based on their national security. And so what that means is there's really no panels, there's no reviews, there's no discussions that are being held at the WTO. Any government can simply say, I'm resorting to this action based on national security. And so that can turn into protectionism, it can turn into different technical barriers to trade, it can basically fragment and dismantle the system. So these are really the three global challenges. And maybe a call to all of the parliamentarians in the room. I mean, you have such an important role to play in reaching out to your governments and and working with them so that within the WTO they really push on reform and they kind of tackle these three urgent issues. The MFN, let's make sure that that works for the future. Artificial intelligence, how do we get global trade rules that will make sure that AI benefits everyone trying to use it for trade? And last but not least, how do we kind of manage national security concerns? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it is true that the line between national security motivations and protectionism is really thin, became really thin lately. But anyway, very interesting words. And let's move to Mr. Badr Aliwa, founding president of Sterling Asset Management, to ask him if investor, well, to ask him, given the fact that investors today face growing uncertainty stemming from geopolitical tensions, inflation, and market volatility, what factors are currently driving investment decisions the most?
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, uncertainty is nowadays very concrete. It's not only about something we are afraid of. When we look at our screens, numbers can move like 10%, 15% a day. So it's definitely something we're living in. The factors, first of all, the geopolitical risk. Before, the geopolitical risk was something like background noise, you know, something that we read in the books, we take into account, but it's not a factor that was really in the front seats of investment decisions. Nowadays, because of the Strait of Hormuz conflict, it is something that comes first in top of mind when we talk to some private funds and some investors. Probably because what happened for the last 3 months is something that really very few people were aware about this kind of risks. This is the first factor. The second factor is the cost of capital. We were living in a world, even if we had the inflation shock back in the Ukraine-Russia war, in the beginning of the year, we were living in a world where we were talking about disinflation and where things were going back to normal. Because of this unprecedented energy crisis, we are, as my colleague said, we are in a higher for longer. And we went into this kind of vicious circle where this shock created higher inflation expectations, and then it is affecting now the country's debt. We don't talk yet about debt crisis yet for most of the countries, but we are in unseen territories where we are facing a higher debt, maybe as before, but with higher interest rates, but in a higher debt universe. And so we basically are seeing now a higher cost of capital. This is the second factor. The third factor is the rise of real assets. I think it's the first time for some decades that central banks are announcing that the first asset they hold are real assets like gold and not treasury bonds. And definitely it means something for investors, and it means new paradigm in terms of asset allocations.
All right, so new paradigm. Very, very interesting. Now, let's move to Mr. Hadil Bahi. We will ask him the two questions, so we will then come back from this side. First question, from your perspective, what are the main challenges currently affecting global and regional connectivity?
Merci beaucoup. Je dirais pas deux.
Thank you very much. I would say there's two that are known to all virtually and that come to mind whenever we talk about connectivity issues. But let's remember why connectivity is so important. Very simply because it's all about the economic competitiveness of the countries and even groups of countries as part of economic communities. The more efficient connectivity is, the more opportunities there are, and the more the economy is competitive, the more opportunities and job creations there are, so everyone's happy. Less connectivity means that we would be less happy, probably. So connectivity is important for issues related to logistics competitiveness. So what are the main challenges to connectivity today, especially at the regional scale? By aligning to everything that has been said, I would say it's geopolitical fragmentation. The rise in geopolitical pressures in some regions of the world have impacted the logistics chains, the global and regional logistics chains. And this has been mentioned by the representative of the IMF. Major disruptions have created problems with sourcing in terms of energy. And so supply chains around the world have been disrupted, and this pushes logisticians and shippers to go through different logistics channels, and this creates additional issues, and it's not good for connectivity. And so this is the main thing. The second point, which is a bit more natural and obvious and less recent than the first one, is the infrastructure and connectivity gap, especially in Africa. Africa is behind when it comes to development of infrastructure, transport infrastructure, ports, railways, roads. And this is the main instruments for connectivity. Sometimes, even when we have this infrastructure, the transport to itself is lacking. And this makes transport and travel less optimal in these regions. Like I said, this is particular to Africa, and it brings about additional costs. So in addition to these costs, these additional logistics costs, we find these higher in Africa than in other regions of the world. But then there's also the lack of opportunity, or the difficulty to seize opportunities that exist, meaning there is potential in Africa, but it's blocked because of this lack of infrastructure. And this is a matter of investment. Of course, investments in infrastructure, cooperation, and regulatory issues. So these are probably the two main challenges. And let's not forget that we can add a third one, which is the energy transition. The transport sector consumes practically 1/3 of fossil fuels around the world. And it produces about 1/3 of the greenhouse gases globally. So this is a very important topic today for connectivity, which means that we want to make our infrastructure more sustainable. We need to review our energy sources. We're thinking about alternative sources, and the fleet too, whether they're the ships or cars. We're looking for cleaner transport modes. So this is a topic that we cannot overlook today. And we can't just leave it for the future. And then the fourth and last challenge, and this has been mentioned by our panelist colleagues as well, this is a topic of digitalization. And in the area of connectivity, this is something that can help you save a lot of points when it comes to optimizing costs, logistics costs. And here again, we are behind, especially compared to other countries that are highly innovative in new technology for connectivity. And this delay is costing us a lot of money in terms of logistics competitiveness. So all of this geopolitical fragmentation, infrastructure gap, energy transition, and digitalization, I consider that these are the four main challenges that concern the African region in particular. And to overcome them, we need political alignment. And we have that today, but we need to step up our efforts when it comes to cooperation, investment, regulatory, coming closer from a regulatory point of view. And to conclude, I would say openness of markets in an effective manner, not just on paper. Thank you. Very well. So, second question. Morocco has
Et dans les infrastructures dans les dernières années. Et comment est-ce que ces investissements contribuent à renforcer les liens entre Europe, Afrique et la région du Golfe? Oui, toujours vous. Et
Oui,
après-
et effectivement. Alors, je reviens à la première idée que j'ai dit. Connectivité veut dire
that I said connectivity means competitiveness. And so this is a fundamental idea that Morocco was already aware of this when His Majesty accessed the throne in 1993 and convinced of this fundamental idea. There was a major effort to modernize infrastructure. But at the same time, this happened at the same time as other projects. There was training of human resources, development of competencies, the reform of the regulatory framework, the business climate, etc. This is something, thanks to the enlightened vision of His Majesty, this turned Morocco into a true logistics platform between Europe and Africa. But this is something that benefited our country first and foremost, because by developing all of this, we were able to attract significant foreign investments that have allowed us to develop industrial ecosystems. I can mention the automotive industry, aerospace, and these major industrialists trusted Morocco, and that's because they know it's a stable country. So these are investors that need to have this long-term vision, and to do that, they need some degree of political stability. They also saw that Morocco has developed a logistics system that's highly efficient, that allows them to transport their goods at lower costs and to export them to Europe, for example, which is the main market, while remaining competitive on these markets. All of these efforts have made it possible to have a real impact on the development of the industrial ecosystem. And the direct consequence of this is that there are job opportunities. There have been job creations. The automotive sector alone created more than 150,000 jobs. And so we can say that 150,000 families have benefited or directly benefit from this momentum thanks to connectivity, not just connectivity, but thanks to connectivity as well. And there's a link with the whole region, because let's not forget that Morocco is connected to more than 40 African countries through ports and 70 African countries through airports, and with Europe as well. And the same key role that was played by Tangemed will be played by the new port of Nador West Med. And so this is something that provided good results, and we will replicate it in the region of Nador, which will also trigger an economic momentum in favor of the Oriental region. And it continues to play a complementary role with Tangemed on this connection between Europe and Africa. And the last example is Dakhla Atlantic, the port of the south. It will be the third example of this winning recipe, if I may, where we have infrastructure that creates an economic dynamic locally, and at the same time, it plays a connection role between major markets, issuers, and producers, and it makes it possible to extend this economic dynamic beyond Morocco, in particular to some African countries. And to summarize, this is the vision that has made it possible to both improve logistics and economic competitiveness of the country with the human impact that's very high, and it also gave Morocco this capacity to be a liaison between Africa and the North, and we were able to extend this partnership beyond our borders. Thank you very much.
Badr Aliwa, in order to ask him, where do you see the most promising investment opportunities across Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions?
Thank you. As we say, periods of stress makes the greatest opportunities. I believe that I believe that our brothers in the Gulf region, because of the crisis we lived like for the last months, will make very big structural changes, sometimes accelerate some change they already have done. And what's happened in the Strait of Hormuz will let them change and invest heavily on some infrastructure and some new paradigms. And I believe this region, because of this crisis, will probably be the best investment opportunities in the years to come. This is my strong beliefs, because of the crisis, not the other way around. This is the first thing. The second thing is, if we look at all the sectors and all the new sectors that we see, like AI and technology, basically the match is between USA and China. And even if Europe has great minds, great opportunities, great saving capabilities, most of the savings actually go to United States. And I think that when you find a way to find the complementarity between what Europe has in terms of knowledge and capital, and everything that Europe lacks to be like USA or China, in terms of energy, in terms of youth, in terms of growth, in terms of commodities, you will see it in this region of Mediterranean Africa. And so all the businesses that are able to find the complementarity between in the region, of course, between Europe and Africa and the Gulf region, will find their way in terms of competition with the United States and China. And as my friend said, this is basically how some industries, for example, in our country, in Morocco, managed to be very competitive at a world stage, because it used some infrastructure, it used some technology in Europe, it used highly productive young people in Morocco. And if we try to be stubborn and want to play alone, like because you will find we won't find the competitiveness to stay in the game. That's my belief.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And now we go back to Ms. Violeta Gonzalez of the WTO. And we all know about the difficulties in the WTO reform process. And in the light of today's growing emphasis on regional globalization and localized trade agreements, what reforms or initiatives should the WTO pursue? And what is the current status of the international trade architecture, and how do you see its future?
Thank you for the question, and maybe picking up on your last point in terms of the future of the WTO. I've been sitting here thinking that since the organization was born here through the Marrakesh Agreement, maybe we need to bring our governments back to Marrakesh so that they can, plan and set that roadmap for the future right here. There's no doubt that our organization is going through enormous challenges, and what I wanted to say is that first there's in terms of the reform is really a reform process. It's not dismantling the organization. It's not a major revamp. There's a lot that works, and it works really well. There's from our economists, what we know is that, for example, the most favored nation tariff rates, yes, we've seen a decrease from 80% of trade being kind of following WTO MFN principles. In 2024, we've now gone down to about 72%. So there is a challenge on MFN, but still a very substantial amount of global trade is done with WTO rules. So there's a lot that works. There's a lot of agreements around sanitary and phytosanitary standards, for example, and measures, technical barriers to trade. There's a lot of work that's really rich. But there is no doubt that the world from 1994 and today's world is really different. And so at that time, there was no knowledge or sense of what digital trade could be, which is such an important and growing industry, e-commerce. There wasn't the urgency of looking at environmental products and goods and services that we see now because of the urgency of climate change. So there is this reform process. It's a painful process for a lot of our members. And we just had our ministerial conference in Yaoundé a couple of months ago. And, you probably read the headlines, but they weren't very positive. They were really, we had a kind of devastating conference. At the same time, there hasn't been more activity looking at the reform process than we have now, and we basically have all of our big and small players at the table. That includes China, the US, putting clear, concrete proposals on the reform process forward, includes the EU, includes the African group, smaller states. Everybody is at the table. Now, how quickly will our members work to make sure that the reform process gets us to where we need to be? That's what's really at stake. And this is another call to all of the parliamentarians in the room to really push your governments and that sense of urgency. Now, to answer your question, because I know you really want me to get to that in terms of regionalization and regional trade. And it's been very inspiring to hear this morning so many parliamentarians and so many presidents of assemblies look at not only Morocco as kind of the bridge between the Gulf, Africa, and Latin America, but really kind of talk about that regional trade and regional agreements. That's what we call them also at the WTO. Sometimes they are regional in nature. They kind of stay within a specific region. Sometimes they cross regions. But they're all called regional trade agreements, and they've existed for a long time. Some of them even before the WTO was created, like NAFTA, for example, the North American Free Trade Agreement, now with a different name. So they've been there. We can track nearly 400 of these agreements, and for us, they're very important. They really help countries get deeper into their integration. And so we like them, we want to see them existing, but we see a space where they can really coexist with WTO rules and kind of the global architecture that WTO has helped to build. Those agreements play a very different role. They sometimes set preferential tariff rates, and we welcome those. They sometimes look deeper into rules that are very important for today's world, whether it's on digital trade or on environment, and so these are very important. But it's not to say that the WTO cannot have those types of agreements. We call them plurilaterals. This means that we don't need 166 governments to agree on these agreements. They can have a subset of our members. And back in the day, maybe early 2000s or so, we started to have some of those plurilaterals. And one of them that is a very, very important one to 50 plus of our members is the government procurement agreement. One which today helps to open markets valued $1.7 trillion because it really helps to promote transparency and predictability in government procurement arrangements. What happened in the last 10 years is that some of our governments then started to block the emergence of these plurilaterals. And so we have two that are so important to businesses. I've heard a lot about businesses and investment and kind of what they need. And there's two agreements that are quite important. An agreement on global rules on e-commerce that has about 67 governments on board, and an agreement on investment facilitation for development with about 128 governments. And they've been sitting there. We have some members that are blocking the incorporation of those agreements into the WTO framework, and we have a lot of members that are working now to unblock that blockage, and that is part of the reform process that our governments are undergoing right now. So you can think about a future that if we are able to unlock that blockage that we're facing now, the WTO should become a forum for having those plurilaterals. And that means that any government would have access to 166 governments from across regions, and we should be able to come up with new rules that will help to tackle some of the global challenges. So in terms of a future, what I see is really a global architecture that continues to be governed by the WTO, so that every country, no matter how big or small, is part of global trade and is at the table. But a growing importance and recognition of the role of plurilateral, so that the organization can move faster, can be more agile, can respond to today's challenges, and where we won't see a growing amount of fragmentation of regional trade agreements happening everywhere, where it could lead to a more fragmented world. And we've done a lot of research and studies around what a more fragmented world would do to global trade and to GDP, and it would certainly decrease it. So I just want to leave you with that moment, and maybe I can see some parliamentarians from Morocco in the room, and maybe calling on them to perhaps, inspire their government to come to the WTO and urge the rest of our governments to maybe come back to Marrakesh. Maybe the new pathway for the future of the organization is here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Violeta. So now it's the turn of Mr. Abdullah Jeffrey. Second question. What more can governments and international financial institutions do to mobilize private investment and support sustainable development across our region? What role can MPs have towards that end? And I think it refers also to the parliamentary network. And again, it connects also with the risk adversity we have in this region, I think. So please.
No, thank you for this question. I think it's important that these three groups work in unison, because each cannot achieve the goal on its own. I think I touched a lot on most of the points that the governments need to take. I think number one is fixing the enabling environment. This is very key, because incentives and promotion can be appealing and attractive, but if the enabling environment has a lot of bureaucratic hurdles and have a lot of uncertain processes, or processes that don't have a clear outcome, that enabling environment will stifle the appeal for private capital. The second point, I mentioned this earlier as well, and I'll emphasize it again, is build a pipeline, not a one-off investment opportunity. This is very important, and I'll attach to it a key component that I failed to mention in my earlier intervention, which is focus on execution. I think having a pipeline is interesting and appealing. A lot of countries also focus on promotion and of investment, but then when it comes to execution, they don't invest as much political capital into getting projects to the finish line. And this is very important. I've seen many economies fail to attract private capital just because the projects linger and either fizzle away or by the time they're ready for execution, they've lost all commercial viability. So execution is very important. This is what attracts investors and private capital. And finally, the point that you kindly emphasized, which is protecting fiscal credibility. Again, this is important, especially in the current environment where the public debt is rising, interest rates seem to be heading up again. So it's important to focus on this. Now, the second part is what can IFIs do? And this is the role that my organization, IFC, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank Group, aims to achieve. First is better deployment of concessional financing. So we have access to concessional financing that we use to deploy into blended finance solutions. We found that this is very effective in unlocking opportunities that attract private sector. So we need to be, but these resources are scarce and they are expected to become even scarcer as we progress. So we need to be very wise in how we deploy them. And we have been coming up with innovative structures to help balance the risk reward. I mentioned earlier that investors don't shy away from risk. They just price it. And if the risk reward balance works, then they invest. So this is where concessional financing can come in when the risk and reward balance is not commercially feasible. An IFI can come in, bring in a little bit of concessional financing that helps balance that risk and reward just at the initial phase to unlock the private capital to come in. And then that operation will become commercially viable and sustainable on its own. So it's important to do this. Now, some of these structures can be a first loss cushion where you bring a very small amount of money that can absorb the first shock of a loss if the project encounters it in the first few years. That gives a lot of comfort and protects the investment going forward. There are other structures like interest rate buy downs and such. The second important thing that the IFIs can do, and this is something that we started doing recently, is focusing on the demonstration effect. In a lot of challenging markets, what we find in a lot of these private sector projects is that DFIs, development finance institutions, are the main or maybe the only lenders to that project. The problem is that doesn't send a very strong signal to the private capital. Okay, so this project is working because the DFIs may have more patient capital, higher tolerance for risk, but it's not really a place for me as a private investor. We want to change that. We want to focus that in each investment, we mobilize private capital because that's where the demonstration effect comes in. If other investors see, oh, this investor who's a private investor is investing in this project, obviously they see potential for profits. Maybe there are other opportunities in that market that I can also explore. So we're focusing a lot on demonstration effect by focusing on increasing how much private capital we mobilize in each investment that we make. Now I'll come to the final point, which is what MPs can do. I think one key objective is passing the laws that lowers investor uncertainty. I mentioned policy unpredictability. This is what pushes investors away. So the responsibility really falls on the MPs to ensure that investors see a stable environment. If there are rules coming, they need to see it coming well ahead. No surprises, no unpredictability. This is very important. So anchoring the reforms at the MPs is more important than at the government. And then last point is focusing on competitiveness, not promotion. I think promotion, which is a lot of governments and regulatory bodies focus on, it's easy, it's flashy. I equate it to a car having leather seats and wooden panels. It looks nice, but it has limited functionality. And then when the investor wants to come in, they look at other things. They look at the pipeline, opportunities for scale, track record of execution. If those are not in place, then all those incentives don't mean much. So focusing on competitiveness like permit times, land access, digital customs, contract enforcement, these things are not flashy, but these are the things that when you open up the hood of the car, this is what matters. This is the engine. It's tough work, but it's a lot more effective and attracting investors. I'll stop here.
All right, thank you, and thank you very much. So, Brett Rayner, another question, actually the last question of the panel. So you bear the responsibility of a great answer. Our discussions this afternoon have been focusing on global challenges to economic integration and free trade at a time when the world economy is becoming more fragmented and shock-prone. Drawing on the findings of your Connecting Continents work, what are the main messages for policymakers in the region? How can deeper regional and cross-regional integration help sustain growth and strengthen resilience in an increasingly uncertain global environment?
Thanks, Giulio. The pressure's on here, I guess, and I have to see if I can bring it all together. The central insight that I want to offer is this. Economic integration and trade corridors are no longer just about moving goods from one place to another. They're increasingly about resilience in a fragmented and risk-prone economy. So rather than building a single dominant trade route, countries need to prioritize a network of connectivity so that they have options. And this connectivity now goes beyond traditional trade. It includes energy security, digital infrastructure, data flows, and supply chains. And so this means building alternatives across maritime, overland, and energy and digital routes. The goal is not to replace one dependency with another dependency, but to create a connected network that allows countries and firms to shift when one route is disrupted. But firms have to want to use these routes. So the economics of these trade corridors matters just as much as the geopolitics. A route can look attractive on a map, but firms will only use it if it actually makes business sense. So they have to weigh time savings against things like costs and reliability and predictability of these routes. And this is some of the things you've heard from some of my colleagues as well. On this, Morocco is actually one of the countries that's leading the way. Their automotive sector shows what this kind of connectivity can look like in practice. With 2 decades of coordinated policy, with free zones and purpose-built infrastructure at Tangier Med, and vocational training centers that are co-designed with the manufacturers, they've transformed the sector. And major European firms have brought not just capital, but technology and production processes. And exports have grown 5-fold in a decade. And Morocco has moved up those value chains. So the broader lesson is that successful integration requires a full ecosystem of infrastructure, skills, logistics, and predictable implementation. So let me try to close here with 3 policy recommendations. Because these kinds of connections, they don't build themselves, and parliamentarians have a central role to play through legislation and budget scrutiny and oversight. The first policy priority is macroeconomic stability and regulatory frameworks that are predictable, including for digital infrastructure and data governance and cross-border flows. These kinds of investments are long-term investments, and the investors want to know that the rules of the game are not going to shift halfway through, like Abdullah has said as well. The second policy priority that I want to highlight is continued investment in education and skills. For citizens, economic integration has to translate into jobs, not just transit fees. And so this requires vocational training and partnerships between firms and universities and training institutes so that young people can contribute to economic integration, but also benefit from the economic integration. Finally, the last policy priority I want to offer is consistency. The clearest signal that a country can give on corridor development is consistent reform implementation, credible long-term strategies. Corridor development takes time, as Morocco has shown. So broad parliamentary consensus can reassure the investors that the strategies will persist. And it's that kind of predictability that can help move the ambition to implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So on these three priorities, rule of law, education, and consistency, we're going to close this panel, but not before announcing that before the next panel, there will be the operational scale I was mentioning before, so the signing of an MOU between Oasis 500 of the Kingdom of Jordan and SM Capital from Republic of San Marino / Italy. So let's do that. Thank you to all of you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the signing of a memorandum of agreement between Oasis 500 and SM Capital under the supervision of PAM and also the delegation of the Kingdom of Jordan. So may I call Oasis 500 and SM Capital to the table, please? On a besoin d'un drapeau italien.
We need an Italian flag, please. Can you please?
Please bring it over here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will give the floor to Oasis 500 and SM Capital. There you go. We have like now an Italian flag with us. So I'll give the signatories the floor so that they explain what the memorandum of agreement is all about. Please go ahead. Please.
Okay. So thank you very much for this moment today. I'm Steven Muccioli, CEO and founder of SM Capital. We represent an Italian and a European fund that invest in venture capital in the Mediterranean region. And honestly, today we are here to sign an important memorandum with the Oasis 500. And I'm very happy for this partnership because we believe in the region, we believe in the Mediterranean region, we believe in the connection between capital, people, and strategic innovation. So I'm happy to be here to sign this important memorandum with you.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here. And like you said, I mean, more of the panels we served today were about connectivity and the movement of capital, talents, and the importance of AI and digital era that we are living today. We at Oasis 500, one of the oldest regional VC funds in the Middle East and North Africa, are excited about this moment because we think that a partnership like this will not give us access only to the markets and the investors of Europe, but also to the know-how of how we can improve the digital assets in the region. So we're really excited about this, Stephen, and looking forward to what comes next.
Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, while waiting for the table of signature to be cleared, I'm going to call on the next panel, Madame Suhair El Ali, Vice President of PAM, and also the President of the Second Permanent Commission of PAM, ex-Minister of Planning in the Hashemite Royal Kingdom of Jordan. And I call upon Yuzuki Shimizu, Madame Sana Lahlou, Madame Sarah Randolph-Smith, Madame Misbah Kar, Mr. Lorenzo Maternini, and Dr. Saad Shashu to the stage. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Artificial intelligence is not a technology debate. It is a sovereignty debate. Our region has the assets, the geography, the capital, the talent. What we need is the political architecture to turn that potential into power. This is an opportunity that belongs to us, and the moment to seize it is now. What foundations must we build together to make our region a leading force in global AI?
Good afternoon, everyone. I think what we just witnessed, the signing of the agreement between Oasis 500 and SM Capital. You can't hear? It is. Okay. I was told that the microphone was not working. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. I started by saying that what we just witnessed, the signing of the agreement between Oasis 500 and SM Capital, is one of the fruits of integration and regional cooperation that the PAM offers. And several MOUs have been signed and will be signed tomorrow. So I think this is where we can translate our common vision into concrete actions on the ground for the benefits of our countries in our region. So we're now moving to the second panel, which is fostering investment in artificial intelligence and the creation of a Euromed and Gulf hub. I'm trying to find my glasses. So, welcome to the second thematic session of the day. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all of our distinguished speakers and participants for joining us today and contributing their expertise to this important discussion. AI is rapidly becoming one of the key drivers of innovation, economic growth, and competitiveness worldwide. For the Euromed and the Gulf regions, it presents a unique opportunity to accelerate digital transformation, attract investment, and create highly skilled jobs. At the same time, AI raises important questions related to governance, ethics, and inclusion. Today's discussion will explore how our regions can work together to harness the opportunities offered by AI and to strengthen cooperation in this rapidly changing field. I think what we would like to do is to limit the interventions of our speakers to a maximum within 1 hour, and then open the floor for discussions and questions, because this is a very important topic and changing the landscape of everything that we are doing today. To open our discussion, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Yusuke Shimizu. I hope I said it right. Head of Global Parliamentary Engagement at the World Bank Group and a former Google executive. Thank you very much for joining us today. Your experience at the intersection of technology, development, and public policy provides a unique perspective on the opportunities and challenges presented by artificial intelligence. I would like to pose the first round of questions first. So maybe we can limit the intervention to like 3 or 4 minutes, and then we will go for a second round of questions. Mr. Yusuke, you worked at both Google and in the public sector. From your perspective, how should parliaments and policymakers adapt to ensure that AI contributes to inclusive economic growth while also addressing concerns related to governance, regulation, and public trust? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the question. I'd like to address this from the perspective of having worked on AI policy, both from the Google's perspective, but also the government of Japan.
may we please have some attention to our speaker? I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll just start off with one context. The World Bank just published a global economic prospects report that outlined the growth prospects for the coming decade. We've seen in the past 2 decades that global productivity has been decreasing year on year for the past 20 years. And according to this report, under optimistic scenarios, AI could boost productivity to levels not seen since the 1970s. But that's with 2 big important caveats: that governments are capacitated to take in the fruits of AI, and that the AI adoption is diffused throughout the world. And under the current circumstances, we see a huge concentration of AI adoption. Whilst most of the senior frontier models are concentrated in certain countries and certain firms, while a good chunk of the global population still do not have access to broadband, let alone use of frontier AI models. And under this circumstances, I'd like to perhaps emphasize 3 points. The first one is that good governance and robust regulations are actually prerequisites for AI adoption and investment. And the second point is the importance of promoting fair, robust market competition. And thirdly, to focus less on frontier models, but more on AI readiness and local adaptation. And on the first point, I'll start with the very basic principle that without trust, without robust regulation or governments, I think the last panel talked about predictability of regulations and laws that attract investments. And that's precisely the case here as well for AI investments. Without laws, regulations, and governance, people will not use AI, nor will investments flow. And we found that contrary to public mythology, that regulation stifles innovation, it's actually the opposite. The World Bank currently has a portfolio of about $5 billion in support for AI development. And we've seen across countries that with good governments and regulation, that's actually a driver for AI investments. And secondly, as a corollary to that, sequencing also matters. It's important to have good regulations prior to AI investments rather than the other way around. It's more difficult to retrofit regulations law after investments have already been made. So as lawmakers and parliamentarians, the emphasis should be on setting the rules straight, making them predictable, and making them known so that to attract investments and also usage. The second point is competition. And this goes a little bit back to the fact that a lot of the AI models and investments are concentrated in high-income countries or certain countries. And what that does is it has a potential to see negative aspects of concentration, the scales of the economy, abusive monopoly power, for example. When I was at Google, a lot of the arguments that we were making was that less regulation is better because we just build better products. But that's not necessarily the case. I think as lawmakers, you need to take into account not only the economic aspects, but the socio-political aspects as well. I think the last panel also talked about economic resilience and trying to sustain a bit of a sovereignty in terms of keeping your options open, to not be entangled in one source. So in this context, it's very important for lawmakers to make sure that the rules of engagement for market entry and operations do not stifle local innovation. So that's the second point. And perhaps as a corollary to that as well, what makes AI unique is that market competition is not only about entry or operating in one sovereign country or another. It's more about access to data. And with the current climate, when we have very few big players, a lot of the data that's produced locally are siphoned off to these big companies for them to be monetize it and to become assets of theirs. And parliaments actually do have a role to play. They can set rules of engagement. They can enforce rules about data transparency, data flows, local content creation. They can do that through laws, but they can also do those through government procurement. So there are ways to make sure that the data that's produced locally actually serves the local market. And thirdly, about AI readiness and local adaptation. I think what I just alluded to, when you talk about AI, we tend to think about Claude, ChatGPT, et cetera. But for a lot of the companies, the economic opportunities are not in creating the next Claude or ChatGPT, but actually using AI technology to service the local circumstances. For example, if you, in Nigeria, the World Bank supports a project in which we support farmers use their mobile phones without access to any large broadband or any sophisticated AI frontier models, but they can still predict when to grow their crops, when to harvest them. And that's actually perhaps more important when you talk about the actual impact on the ground. What I mean by actual impact on the ground, the local productivity, the local job creation, the local effects that the adoption, the usage of AI has for the people that these lawmakers serve. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you alluded very strongly to the roles of legislators and to the roles of governments in the regulation process. And I was going to leave my second question to later, but I think it fits right here. In your role at the World Bank, and the importance of countries investing in AI, many countries are, as you said. However, not all have the resources and the capabilities. So how can the World Bank help ensure that developing economies are not left behind in the AI transition? Is there any specific program in place to that end to help support these countries?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I think that's one of the most important questions of the time. Making sure that there is no one left behind with regards to AI. And until very recently, the World Bank did not have a dedicated directorate for AI or digital. But that changed in 2024 when we created our vice presidency unit on AI and digital, led by a former Googler, a former colleague of mine. And we currently have a portfolio, like I said previously, of approximately $5 billion in investments in digital infrastructure, skills training, and regulatory reform. And our plan is to quintuple or increase that by 10x in the coming years. So that is something that we place a huge importance on. What we explicitly do, I think, can be categorized in three aspects. We invest in infrastructure and skills, and we use the keyword of the 4 Cs for developing countries to be able to capture the fruits of AI. One is connectivity. We're talking about electricity. We're talking about broadband connection. And what the World Bank does is invest in, for example, subsea cables, data centers, et cetera.
So you provide the enablers for...
Yes, we provide financing for those. And also regulatory reform support. And also we do a lot of, in terms of policy, we do what's called an AI sandbox. So because of the implications of AI policy is so grand, it's often safer to try policy exams or experiments in a closed environment. So we provide financing and technical expertise so that governments can experiment with AI policy, then scale it at the national and regional level.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ms. Sarah Rentorf-Smith, Head of Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Digital Technologies Division at the OECD. Thank you for being with us. The OECD has been at the forefront of shaping international discussions on AI, governance, and policy. That fits exactly in the comments before. We look forward to hearing your insights on, I'm going to pose 2 questions to you, and I would appreciate if you give us your feedback on that. From your perspective, what are the most significant opportunities and risks that AI presents for economies across the Euromed and the Gulf regions? And as you know, PAM has a rapporteur on AI, Honorable Yacoubi, who recently participated in your OECD Parliamentary Group on AI. Can you tell us more about your OECD parliamentary group and its proposals to ensure that we maximize the benefits of AI and similar technologies and the role of MPs in that regard? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for those questions. And I'll take the benefit of this to answer it through a brief presentation where I'll say a bit about what the OECD does on AI governance, how we work with legislators in our work, and then move on to some of the risks and opportunities that we see for AI. And I hope in this presentation to also leave you with some concrete tools and data that can sort of equip you as legislators as you go about this work. So just to say sort of where we started off, the OECD was one of the first movers in working on AI governance and adopted the so-called OECD AI principles already in 2019. We continue to obviously review and revise as needed, and so they were updated in 2024 in response to the advent of generative AI. We also work hard to translate principles into practice because, again, when you look to your constituents and sort of how are you supposed to go about making these sort of high-level principles something very concrete, we've developed an online observatory that is a one-stop shop, as it were, for a number of resources, some of which I will also share with you today. And then I think also more importantly, at the OECD, we have a platform for dialogue and engagement that extends across 6 continents. We have integrated with the Global Partnership on AI, which includes 46 member countries at this point and is open for interest by countries who wish to adhere to the OECD AI principles. So maybe to speak to your question about how we work with parliamentarians and legislators, we work very closely with the OECD Parliamentary Group on AI, and we were indeed honored to host Honorable Yacoubi, a Member of Parliament of Algeria, and also the PAM Rapporteur on AI last week in Paris. And so we really appreciate his contributions to the discussions there. We had 100 parliamentarians from 40 countries present, and we really found it valuable how he added the message of the importance of interparliamentary cooperation in AI, something that we've also heard very much today. And so obviously vis-a-vis AI governance, the role of parliamentarians, and you know this better than anyone else, is critical to ensure oversight and accountability vis-a-vis companies and sort of the products that are out there. And so again, we really see the Parliamentary Group on AI as key to support these efforts. It's a place where we can sort of compare approaches and also promote policy coherence, which is key. Yusuke talked also about fragmentation, so this is something important. Here's some few pictures of that. So speaking to the opportunities and risks of AI can pose for the region, obviously, and this has been discussed today as well, you know, we see it as unleashing productivity across sectors. This is in manufacturing, agriculture, tourism, and logistics, which are also key sectors for the PAM region. For example, through AI-enabled supply chains and precision agriculture. We also see opportunities in assisting with the delivery of public services, and this is particularly important where there's already a lot of pressure on those services to enhance access. And then also, as we've heard, I think from the outset today, sort of the large youth population and the resource that is, we see opportunities in AI really unlocking youth and workforce potential. So these are really important. And obviously underlying this, and then the previous panel spoke to this, is investment. So this is really key. So we recently published a paper on VC investments in AI firms, and some of the insights that have already been shared came out very strongly here. I mean, first of all, we find that 61% of all VC investments globally are going into AI, so there is strong investment. We also see a very strong concentration geographically and in certain companies, so it's large companies, primarily in the US, China, and EU, that are receiving this investment. And also what we see is that there's concentration currently around infrastructure, so really sort of honing in on compute and data center infrastructure. And again, I don't know if you can see the QR code here, but this will allow you to access the publication. If we look now across PAM economies, there's also been quite significant development here. So just in a little over than a decade, we've seen an increase from 0.4 billion US dollars being invested to as many as $10 billion being invested from VC to AI in the region. And so while we see France and Israel really accounting for 80% of this, there are others coming in. So Italy and the UAE also have seen growing investments. And I did have the pleasure of sitting with some of our colleagues from the UAE over lunch and discussing the role that economy is playing. And so obviously, we really need to look at global divides here and what can be done to advance investments elsewhere. There are also challenges and risks, of course, and I think some of the biggest challenges, and this is really across economies, is obviously quality of data. So if we don't have high quality data, but also compute capacity and digital infrastructure, this really will prevent us moving forward. There's also the labor market disruption and skills, which we have to pay attention to in the sense that these transformations are going to change the types of skills that we need and the jobs that are available. And then finally, and that's why the work on governance and policy is so important, is that there are some really key governance and trust issues. And here, again, the role of parliamentarians is essential. We've developed, and this is one of the tools, if you go to OECD.ai, you'll see something called the AI Monitor. And this is a tool that tracks media-reported risks and hazards associated with AI. And so it can really give a strong sense of what is catching the attention of the public and obviously also lawmakers as concerns risks associated with AI. And one trend we've seen here is sort of the very big rise in reports on synthetic media risks. Maybe this resonates with some of you, but you see the chart here of how that has developed from 2022 to 2025. And so we see a number of jurisdictions responding with very specific regulation to this. And so we've seen in the EU, the EU AI Act requires transparency for deepfakes and certain AI-generated content. We've seen China adopting mandatory labeling and traceability requirements, and the UK criminalizing certain forms of AI-generated media. So while there may be sort of broader AI governance frameworks, these harms may trigger very specific regulation. And you'll also see a list of some of the other types of harms that are particularly prominent in that data set of media-reported harms. So again, to help policymakers harness the opportunities and manage the risks, we've developed this AI Policy Observatory, which I invite you to visit. It's the biggest government-backed repository of AI policies, and it's available online, OECD.ai. We constantly work to expand this. We work with government focal points here. So please do have a look, both for inspiration. The idea here is that this can support peer learning and sort of good practices in what should an AI strategy or what can an AI strategy look like? This notion of specific regulation for specific harms. How have other countries gone about this? And again, our ambition is to really build it out. You'll see here around 90 jurisdictions already reflected and included there, along with 11 international organizations, but there are obviously many more countries out there. So please reach out after this if your country is not there and if you would like to collaborate around that. And then building on this, we have just launched 2 weeks ago an AI policy toolkit. So this is an actually interactive platform that can accompany that journey of developing concrete policies for governing AI. And so here, each country can go in and sort of identify specific areas they're interested in, what they already have in place in terms of policy frameworks, and then the tool will generate concrete examples from for similar economies that again can guide this journey. And maybe just finally, something we're hoping to work on, and that's why I was really excited to be here in Marrakesh, at the heart of an important region, is that we're hoping to develop regional dashboards, so sort of a place where countries can look more within their specific regions and look at real-time data, because we also host a lot of real-time data on our platform, things that we get through very creative partnerships. As you know, national statistics can sometimes lag behind. So we really make an effort to have data that can show us exactly where we are at any point in time. So I think I'll leave you there also in the interest of time.
Thank you. Thank you
you
very much. That was very informative and very useful. I think just as a follow-on question, when I looked at your slide about VC firms investing in AI, it kind of looked like AI is currently a vertical. And we all know that in this time of day, AI is the internet of yesterday, right? And very soon we're moving towards robotics. So what is your feel about, future investments in AI, or is it going to be in verticals that are obviously AI enabled in the future? Do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I mean, we definitely see this trend, like you said, and this is reflected at the OECD as well, right? We are the vertical on AI in my division, but AI is sort of happening across all directorates. I think maybe a trend in investment that I think is particularly interesting and enlightening is we met with investors also 2 weeks ago when we convened the Global Partnership on AI. And what we heard from them is that there's a very strong interest from investors to be able to assess companies' kind of commitment to trustworthy AI, and that they see this as of material value. It's not just sort of a soft issue, but something that they see as generating value, and obviously also as mitigating potential legal fallouts. So I think that is a promising tendency, and what we need now is having frameworks for investors to then make this assessment. So we're thinking about how to do that.
Thanks again. Thank you. We'll now turn our attention to the industrial dimension of AI. It is a pleasure to welcome Ms. Sana Lahlou, country representative of UNIDO in Morocco. Thank you for joining us today. UNIDO continues to play a key role in supporting innovation, industrial development, and technological transformation worldwide. I'm actually going to continue with posing 2 questions to each panelist. How can AI, so my questions to you are, how can AI support industrial development and economic growth across the Euromed and the Gulf regions? And what are some of UNIDO's latest initiatives on AI? And how can they help countries strengthen innovation, productivity, and skills development? And how can PAM and UNIDO strengthen their cooperation, following up to the signature of our MOU to that end? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Alayi. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. I will try to have my remarks very short. I know that tonight is an important game in Morocco, so I'll try to make it short. First of all, allow me to notice something. It's the first panel where we exceed the gender parity. I think we could applaud you because you are the moderator of the panel. Congratulations for that. And it shows that we cannot have inclusive AI without inclusive leadership. So I'm very, very proud to be here. I would like first to thank the House of Councillor of the Kingdom of Morocco and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean for this kind of invitation, but also for the excellent organization of this event. An event where you gather all stakeholders, from parliamentarians, policymakers, financial institutions, private sector, international organizations like myself. And it's really a true honor to be with you today to speak about one of the most promising and pressing topic of our time, which is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence and its potential to shape the future of our economies, and especially in my field of our industry. So as you may know, AI is not only, and you were talking about that, it's not only another technological trend. It's not internet. We are not talking about that. It's really, and in industry, it's really becoming a major driver of industrial competitiveness today. And for the Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf regions, I think the opportunity is not simply to adopt AI, but it's really to use it in order to strengthen our industries, create higher added value jobs, create investment and attract investment, of course. So as you may know, AI industry, we used to talk only about productivity and efficiency, of course, it's normal. Today, it's at the heart of Industry 4.0, smart factories, AI in industry. It helps to pass from reactive to predictive, and ultimately to autonomous system. And my panelist colleague, neighbor here, were talking about that today. We are going more and more autonomous. We don't need people to use that. So we need to tackle and we need to prepare by capacity building, by skills development that. And today, AI industry, it allows companies to improve, of course, their competitivity, to increase their quality, to make real-time better decision, and of course, to optimize supply chain. So in other words, AI in industry is evolving from smart manufacturing to truly intelligent manufacturing, and it's important. But today, the use of AI goes far beyond only productivity. Why AI is important today in industry? Because first, it makes the industry safer to protect the condition of work of workers. It also helps the industry to be more resilient in order to prepare and also to anticipate all kinds of disruptions. And ultimately, and it is very important today, it's also help industry to be more sustainable. Because with the use of AI, the industry can be more safer, optimize the use of energy, optimize the use of water, and also reduce the environmental impact of the industry. So the use of AI today, again, is far beyond only productivity. It's really go more than that. And I think our region has all the assets. We have, of course, advanced digital ecosystem. We have sustainable, strategic location connecting Europe to Africa to Middle East. And we have an incredible talent entrepreneurship ecosystem. And this is very important. So we have all the assets. And today the challenge is not to be, for the region, is not only to be a user of AI, but it's to be a leader of AI in this region. So, I can give you some example about, and that's joined the second question that you asked me about how concretely UNIDO is working with AI. So UNIDO is the UN Industrial Development Organization. We are the specialized agency, the specialized UN agency for inclusive and sustainable industrial development. We help countries to transform their industry through many topics. So it comes from energy efficiency, decarbonization, circular economy, and of course, digital transformation. And AI is at the heart, not only in digital transformation, but all the topics. For example, we have now launched a program in Morocco to help Moroccan SMEs to use AI to reduce the energy cost. So how AI can help also in other topics, not only in the digital transformation that is classical use in Industry 4.0 and others.
Sorry, so, what is the program? Is it training? What is it?
So it's, as UNIDO, we have two types of program. We have first policy making programs. So basically it helps the government for their strategies. I can give you two examples. The first one in Morocco, where we help the government by establishing the roadmap of the use of AI in the industry. We've done the same, by the way, in Jordan, where we also develop a national AI strategy framework in order to move AI from simple solution to real innovation transformation for SMEs. So this is the first part. The second part is technical assistance program. And for that, I can give you 4 examples. The first one, we have created the Global Alliance for AI in Industry. And this Global Alliance, it gathers more than 300 members from academia, governments, industry, private sector, international financial institution. So it's a kind of platform of exchange to show and peer learning to what is happening in AI. The second is capabilities. So you're asking me about what is exactly. So we created some kind of center of excellence by giving technical assistance to SMEs, because we have to upgrade them. And through our center of excellence around the world, we give this technical assistance and capability building to skills and to workers that are working in industry. The third one is the third priority and focus work of UNIDO is that for us, scaling solution is very important, because AI solutions, you can find it everywhere, but you have to pass from pilot project to real impact project. And for that, you need financing. I'm happy to see that there are some financial institutions with us today. So we created a specific program called ScaleX around the world, and I'll invite you all to enter to our website and go through it, where we finance some entrepreneurs that have AI solutions for all sectors: urban, digital, industry, agribusiness, all type of sector, transport, and where they have the solution, but they are at the pilot stage. So we help them, connect them by a kind of platform, global matchmaking, to financial institutions so that they can scale up their project and not keep them at the pilot
You
stage.
finance or you enable?
We are enablers. We have
enable.
global matchmaking platform. We connect financial institution, financial mechanism in general. It could be banks, it could be sovereign funds, it could be AFIs or others. So we help them to promote these projects, and we have doing so far very good in all around the world, not only in our region. And maybe the last point I was talking about, of course, the roadmap. And for us, the 4 points also with policy and governance, because we help AI strategies, but we need you as parliamentarians, because again, the governments can set the vision, but the parliaments can translate that vision into reality, into a more ethical AI. It is very important. I heard that somewhere, so into ethical, more responsible AI, and we know all the risk now that AI have on the world. So again, UNIDO will be more than happy around the region to support, and with the PAM, and maybe to quickly respond to your last question, I think the cooperation between PAM and UNIDO PAM can help raise awareness among parliamentarians of the opportunities and policy implication of industrial AI. So I think together we can do a lot, and to create a kind of Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf AI hub for our region.
Thank you, thank you. Those were great interventions because they show the role of PAM and its dialogue and integration with international organizations, UN agencies, for the benefit of the parliaments and the peoples of our region. So thank you very much. We now move to Ms. Misbah Khar, advisor to the chairman of the Senate of Pakistan and ambassador of the Inter-Parliamentary Speakers Conference. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to hearing your perspective on how legislators can help shape responsible and inclusive approaches to emerging technologies. I will give you my 2 questions. From your experience with the Senate and international legislative bodies, what specific parliamentary actions or joint resolutions are most urgently needed to turn the vision of this Euro-Mediterranean and Gulf AI hub into a reality? And how do you think the Inter-Parliamentary Speakers Conference could join and support it? That's my first question. My second question to you is, given your role with the Inter-Parliamentary Speakers Conference, how can parliaments across the Euromed and the Gulf regions better align their regulations to attract private AI investments while ensuring shared ethical standards and experiences of ISC?
Thank you so much for your questions. So to start with your first question, I feel to transform this vision into reality. First, which I think is very important, is to pool capital and talent. So no single country, however advanced, can dominate AI alone. The Euro-Mediterranean region brings world-class research and regulatory experience. The Gulf brings investment, capacity, and ambitions. North Africa and the wider Mediterranean brings youth, creativity, and growing digital infrastructure. Together, we have all the ingredients to become a global hub for responsible AI. Second, what I think and do feel is we need to de-risk investment. So private capital will flow when it sees clear rules, interconnected standards, and cross-border data frameworks. See, as legislators and policymakers, our job is to create certainty without slowing innovation. Pakistan in the Senate is currently examining how to balance AI governance with incentives for startups. So I believe we can learn much from the EU's approach to trust and the Gulf's approach to scale. Third, we must focus on human impact. Investment in AI should not only chase returns, but also address shared challenges, water scarcity, climate adaptation, healthcare access, and job creation for our young population. Fourth, we must ensure AI reflects our realities. So while researching AI risks for this conference, I begin to wonder most, if not all, AI tools and engines have been developed in the US or China. With all due respect to them, this leads me to question whether the Global South has been properly, accurately captured by these tools. Has our history culture been researched before being programmed? Fifth, we should establish a parliamentary platform for AI cooperation that facilitates dialogues on digital governance, trust, development, data frameworks, and emerging technologies across our regions. This is where the Interparliamentary Speakers Conference can make a meaningful contribution. The ISI demonstrates that parliamentary diplomacy can bring together countries from different regions around common challenges and shared solutions. By connecting parliaments from the global north and south, the IEC can serve as a bridge for knowledge sharing, legislative cooperation, and consensus building on responsible AI governance. Just as the IEC promoted dialogue on peace, security, and development, it can help foster a common parliamentary vision for inclusive and connected AI future. Thank you. That's answering your first question. I think I'm going to move to the second one. So the key lesson from the IEC that shared challenges required shared frameworks. I think private investment naturally flows towards environments that are stable, transparent, and predictable. So we must invest in trust through collaboration. AI will deliver if citizens believe it is safe, fair, and accountable. By establishing joint research centers, shared ethic frameworks, and cross-border training programs, we can build the public confidence. So Pakistan stands ready to contribute to this vision. The IC showed that consensus can be built among countries with diverse political, economic, and cultural backgrounds. Where there is a common purpose, the same approach can be applied to AI governance. Through parliamentary dialogue and cooperation, we can create conditions that attract investment, support innovation, and ensure that technological progress remains ethical, inclusive, and beneficial for all our societies. Thank you, and I look forward to working with all of you to turn this into a reality. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now we turn to the entrepreneurial and investment perspective. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Lorenzo Maternini, CEO of Perspectives AI and board member of CDP Venture Capital. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to hearing your views on innovation, entrepreneurship, and the future of AI-driven businesses. My two questions to you are, you come from the private sector and have been actively involved in driving innovation and technological transformation. How do you see AI reshaping entrepreneurship and the startup ecosystem over the next decade? And my second question is, many young entrepreneurs have innovative ideas, but struggle to access funding and scale their businesses. What is the biggest challenge they face today, and how can it be addressed? Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the PAM Assembly for inviting me, especially to the President, Mr. Giulio Centemero. It's an honor to be here and discuss this beautiful public and speakers with me. And also discussing on this crucial topic, because AI is not just like a new technology. AI is a change of paradigm. So it's a change, completely change of what we were used to see before and the kind of product we were used to buy, to use for our work, and now we are going to change completely our way of working, our way of behave in the society. So in the last, I think in the last 15 years, we were used to have digital tool for every kind of request need we have. We could use app, we could use also membership. If we use, for example, cloud services, like software in cloud, or just we could build our own software. What AI really changed, what AI breaks, is that, for example, doing a software is a commodity. Building a software is not an obstacle anymore. And replicate also software is something very easy with AI. So now, we are moving, for startups, for example, just they deliver a service, it's not a challenge anymore. It's not something that the market requests anymore. Now we are living in a middle, I can say in a middle land, because now we are interpreting AI as a product, but AI is not a product. Because AI is a sort of nervous system that you install in the process, install in your company, and AI is very able to automatize, a process, but AI is not a product. So now we are living a period that the startups, especially, they are selling AI as a product, and they are creating a sort of wrapper. So they are using large language model with, and they are attaching those language model to a layer, and they are, for example, for different specific needs, they are selling they're selling AI as a product, but AI is not a product. So what we are, and I'm not a forecaster, of course, but what I'm seeing is that we are moving from a word of service to a direct outcome. It's like, for example, for accounting, a CFO used to have different softwares for doing his job. Now with AI, a CFO doesn't need, a tool, doesn't need a co-pilot for doing his job. He needs something else. He needs to have directly the result of the balance sheet. He needs to have the final outcome of something. So for startups, they don't have to create a software, they don't have to create a service anymore, just they have to create an outcome. They have to create the final result. This is a significant improvement, and this is a significant difference from before. Because for creating an outcome, for creating a final result, you need to create a system. You need to be connected to the source of data. You need to be very competent in the specific domain of that service. So that's the big difference. Also, another difference that, of course, hardware and deep tech is much more important than before, because the infrastructure, physical infrastructure on which AI is built is crucial now. The efficient on the physical infrastructure is crucial. So for startup now, working on deep engineering, working on deep tech is a new frontier, but is something that will be the future. For the second question, one very easy answer, and it's the most common answer, which is the biggest challenge that the startup today, especially not in US, not in China, but especially in Europe, has, is the access of the quantity of money, Because of course, if you see, for example, the VC investment in Europe, I think is around a fifth of VC investment in US. So the scale is apparently the scale is the biggest problem. But to me, that is not the biggest challenge, the scale and the quantity of money, but the biggest challenge is the direction, the focus of the startups and the direction of those money. Because I think now we are running a race, a competition with US and competition also with China on the foundational model, on the cloud platform. But I'm sorry for that, but maybe this is something that is a race that we lost for different reasons, but maybe is a race that we lost. We should find a different race field. We should understand which is the next battle that we have to battle. And I think, for example, AI applied to robotics or to manufacturing, this is I think this is a field that, I mean, is partially unexplored by US. China for robotics is investing a lot, but I think we can still be on that race. Another, I think, is a very important topic is the edge computing. Because now AI is based on the super expensive cloud infrastructure. But, I mean, I'm not sure this is the future of AI. Maybe edge computing means that we can run different AI model on my own laptop. Maybe this could be the future of the AI. So understanding how to augment the computational power on the on-premise, so on the computer, maybe this is a field that could be a change for the high race. So the point is, it's not a matter of the scale, it's not a matter of the quantity of money, but also it's a matter of direction of what we want that our startup's gonna focus and where we want to invest. Last, I think one of the most, I think, important topic is how we can evaluate, how we can use our talents, because our university in the Mediterranean area, we have the best talents ever in the world. Our university are a jewel in the world, especially for tech subject, for engineering. So we need to understand how we can empower the tech transfer, how we can exploit much more the university talents that want to enter in the startup fields, they want to enter in the work field. So concluding, I think one of the biggest challenge that the young innovators have today are not just accessing to the same quantity of money that US can offer in the market, but just to understand which is the next race that they have to run, and understanding exactly what to focus on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, that was very interesting from an entrepreneurial perspective. You mentioned, very clearly about the significant investments in AI in China and the US. And this is where I think if we all put our minds together, our minds and thoughts and money and brains in the Euromed and the Gulf region and create an AI hub, I think we can all leverage on the strengths that each of our countries has. The agreement that was signed just earlier now is just a first step towards that. So I think that's one way that we can make an impact on the AI ecosystem or the going forward if we put our minds and thoughts together. Our last speaker is again an entrepreneur, and I would like to introduce Dr. Saeed Shachu, Vice President at ABA Technology. Thank you for being with us today. As a technology entrepreneur and innovator, your experience will provide valuable insights into the practical opportunities and challenges involved in building successful AI ecosystems. So my two questions to you are, from your experience in the technology sector, what does it take to build a successful AI ecosystem? And what are the key ingredients that are still missing in many emerging markets? Second question is, Morocco is increasingly positioning itself as a digital and innovation hub. What role could it play in the creation of a future Euromed and Gulf AI hub? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, I have to apologize for my English. It's not so fluent as I would like. So if it's possible to switch to French, just in order to answer your questions. So please use your translators for who doesn't speaks English. So, je vais juste parler en français.
So I'll be speaking in French, and I would like to thank you for your invitation. For me, it's a great honor to be with you and to talk about our modest experience in the field. With respect to the first question, thank you for that. I think that building an ecosystem for artificial intelligence comes down to setting a concept that's important, which is to refuse to see in artificial intelligence just a pile of technology. We have a feeling that AI is a software. It's something that we can import, that we can use daily. But actually, I like to call it some sort of sovereignty suite, because it's important to see in AI an actual source of technological sovereignty, a full one. And they can only be efficient if there are several components. So we have talent, we have software technology, we have hardware technology, we have the funding. We also have everything that's related to applied research, financing, like I said, as well as the ability to transform this value chain into capabilities or an ability to transform the economic sector. So to answer your question, in many markets, in many emerging markets, actually, there isn't really an absence. We see these bricks in every country. We find the talents, we find the technology, we find funding capacity. But what's lacking is this capacity to orchestrate, to cement everything together, to make AI an actual vector for fulfillment and industrial development. And this is what will make a market a consumer of imported artificial intelligence, or, and this is what we aspire to, a capacity to become an actual player that will make AI, use it and export it. So to answer your question, what are the bricks that we need? We need development capacity when it comes to software systems. Today, we need capacity to develop agents. We need capacity to develop powerful models. And we also need capacity, hardware capacity, that will come and run all of these systems. So these are actual prerequisites. And with all of this, we already have the first bricks, but these are not enough, the first building blocks. And we're beginning to see first-rate players like Abba Technology in Morocco develop Fusion AI, which is a full platform. It's an AI factory that makes it possible to simulate data, capture it, train models, roll out agents, and apply them to various sectors. And at the same time, Abba Technology in Morocco has developed sovereign infrastructure that makes it possible to run these models. These are some examples of sovereignty, things that are becoming important today in circumstances where we don't always control the immediate environment. There may be conflict, there may be market restrictions, which tomorrow can put all of this in peril. And then the second pillar is one that we talked about, which is research. For me, research should be applied research. Today, AI should benefit sectors that need it. Strategic sectors, health, education, water, energy, defense, logistics, mining, etc., etc. And so AI shouldn't just be a technological demonstrator. It needs to adopt, and there needs to be talent to measure its impact and ability to transform these sectors. The third pillar is capital. I'm not teaching you anything. AI is actually something that uses up a lot of budget, so we need venture capital. We also need to attract investors, and we need public procurement, and we need a strong industry that will support through contracts this AI, so that outstanding environments can develop for AI. And then there's the talent, and this is very important. Well-trained talent is key. Today, this is a new approach. We need to train a new kind of talent. How can we train differently? That's the question. And here I'd like to talk about the Moroccan example, because your question refers to it. Today, with the Ministry of the Digital Transition and Administration Reform, ABBA Technology, in association with the SMEs, has launched very interesting initiatives like the Gen AI. Every year, it trains 1,200 talents in artificial intelligence, and it's a new mode. These are talents that are trained for 4 months in theoretical training and then 4 months in actual professional integration, where they develop innovative solutions for the companies that host them, and with the 2030 vision to train up to 6,000 students per year. And with this pool of talents, we are, like you mentioned, we hope to have a pool of talents that can be beneficial to the hub. Now, to answer your second question was on the possibility for Morocco to serve as a hub, a Euro-Mediterranean hub, and for the Gulf countries. Let me recall the special position of Morocco. Morocco is an Arab country, an African country, a Mediterranean country, an Atlantic country, a country that's a neighbor to Europe and that's naturally open to its brothers from the Gulf countries. And so geographically, you have a true strategic benefit for Morocco to be able to play this role. Outside of this exception, if you will, there are other aspects, technological aspects, human aspects, and strategic aspects. If I look at the strategic aspects, Morocco has launched several initiatives today. The Ministry of the Digital Transition has already launched the Digital Morocco 2030 program, by virtue of which Morocco is looking to become digital and adopt AI. There's also the adoption of the new strategy, which is the AI Made in Morocco. All of this shows to what extent there is maturity at the national level to launch these changes and the introduction of artificial intelligence in Morocco's daily use. And the case of Morocco can be also a case of talent. I talked to you about the various initiatives in Morocco. A hub is not only a place to meet. This is important, of course, but it's also the ability to provide talent that will support this transformation. The second role of Morocco is its ability to be a player and a platform that produces agents, that trains models, that produces sovereign AI. And when I say sovereign AI, that doesn't mean that we will break from the external outside world. We're not in autarky. We can be sovereign, as we've proven, like what we did with Fusion AI. We can be that while having strategic partnerships with international players. This is the case with NVIDIA. We partner with them. We're their premium technological partner. And thanks to that, we were able to develop platforms that make it possible to run artificial intelligence models in AI box format. So today, we can have sovereign AI with the final clients without any dependency on cloud and in full autonomy. And to conclude, and apologies if I was long, I also think that Morocco today has an important role to play. And it's very important when we talk about a hub, it's important to not be in a perspective where each contributes with just one aspect, like a region will contribute with funding, another region will express certain needs, another one will provide the technology. No, I see a hub as an actual partnership where we're all equal, because in every country we can have quality training, we can have funding, we can also have innovative technology. And so this is a call to all of the members here to say we can do things right and we can go even further together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I would like to start by thanking you and saying that you close by saying we can do things right, and we can. Because listening to you, I see that Morocco is advanced in as far as AI is concerned. I can speak for my country, Jordan, extremely advanced in AI. Many of the Arabized programs are done by Jordanians. There are AI companies that have gone global from Jordan. They're sitting in Silicon Valley. And our universities educate people in future technologies and in AI. You cannot have an AI degree because we know it's a very fast evolving process. But you can always have ongoing training and education along the way. But so yeah, investing in talent, universities, we all have it. I know there's significant also investment in the Gulf in AI. Many of the Gulf countries are very, very advanced in AI. Not just the private sector, but also the public sector, the governments, the legislators. And this is something that we need to have. You called it, our speaker called it the nervous system, and I think that nervous system of AI applies in many of our countries. And so, yes, I agree with you. The hub does not mean that we place something in a specific country. The hub means that we all work together to make sure that we have equal opportunities, that we have equal access, that we're all able to create, the agentic AI, the agents, the swarms, the whatever, everything that's related to the AI infrastructure ecosystem. And our countries are, honestly, they're solid, they're good. But we need to have a focused effort and approach to put, as I said, our minds and brains together and have cooperation so that the Euromed can position itself as a hub. Geography, I don't know where it is, but we can be a hub as a concept, an AI hub for the Euromed and the Gulf region. So thank you so much to all of our panelists. I would like to now, maybe we can take 15 minutes of questions. I would like to now open the floor if anybody has any questions. And if you have, please address it to the specific panelists that you would like to ask question to. No questions? Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have 3 announcements, and they are all good news. One of them is that we have finished. And the second one is that we're having dinner at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. at the Selman Hotel. Your drivers know where we are having dinner tonight. And the third good news is that we're not starting at 7 in the morning, we're starting at 9 tomorrow morning. So I'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you for the panelists, and thank you, Honorable, and for everyone for their contribution. We'll see you tonight at the dinner, and see you tomorrow also at the event. Thank you very much. What?